to Horsefly Chronicles Radio with Julia and Philip Siracusa, sponsored by Carnation, airing live on the United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM in New Orleans. This show's entrance has been edited, produced, and directed by Gwen Clapper from Perfect Trust Productions, LLC. You can find us at perfecttrustproductions.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday night segment of Horsefly Chronicles Radio with myself, Julia Siracusa, and Phil Siracusa. We're broadcasting live from the International Public Radio and the United Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. This evening's show is fully sponsored by Carnation, so we want to thank them for their sponsorship. We love them. You have to do a few things in order to participate. Go over to the YouTube channel, UFO Paranormal Radio, or International Public Radio. You can also go into all of the Facebook stations, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, UFO Undercover with Joe Montaldo, News on the Flip Side, and also Twitch, SoundCloud, and Podbean. And also you can go over to our group, Horsefly Chronicles Radio. And if you have any questions for our beautiful guest sitting over there, please ask. So tonight, welcome our very own Michelle Desrochers. Not only does she do an amazing job of managing the network, she's been professionally researching the unexplained and successfully working in media for the past 20 years, with her area of study focused primarily on hauntings and demonic attachments. She's the creator and producer to the very popular and award-nominated radio show, The Outer Realm, to which she hosts with the amazing Amelia Pisano, and The Grey Zone Uncensored, that she co-hosts with the owner of our network, Mr. Joe Montaldo. And she has been featured all over TV. So please welcome her to the show.
Welcome.
Yay! Can you hear us?
Well,
do you imagine if we can't hear her?
There you go.
Here we go.
A little Halloween trick.
That's what happens. You leave me in charge of the soundboard. You'll leave me to my own devices.
Oh my God. I was like, we can't hear. The manager of the network, we can't hear.
Well, Michelle, welcome to Horsefly Chronicles Radio. We go back quite a few years.
Yes.
As far as I can remember, it's like the last 5-6 years that I've been in the paranormal. Michelle has a very large resume.
Yes,
I see her all over television.
Yeah, I want to know really, like, how did you get into the paranormal? Like, what happened to you? Did something happen to you as a child to really like push you into the whole world of paranormal?
Oh gosh. Yeah, it's a long story, but I'll condense it. I mean, I come from a family of mediums, so I've been able to see the dead from a very young age. I was fortunate that my mother was pretty understanding about it. It wasn't discouraged in me at all. If I would see somebody, she would show me old family photographs to see if there was somebody I can pick out, just to make sure that I was dealing with maybe visiting family members and nothing to really be concerned about. Whereas my father was sort of like, that's crazy. There's nothing here. The house is settling. It's nothing. It wasn't until later on in life when my dad would tell me about all these experiences he had. I'm like, you led me to believe that you didn't believe in any of this stuff. So it was crazy, but because he had had all kinds of experiences himself. So it turns out that I had both sides of my family who were, involved in all of this. But as I got to be, the typical preteen age, things started taking a bit of a different turn, and I started having something more malevolent coming in. And I also know now, after being, researching for so many years, that I was also most likely projecting energy and creating a lot of poltergeist activity myself, because I could get all kinds of things to happen within the home. But I know something came in, which was of a more malevolent nature and would cause a lot of havoc in the home and a lot of heaviness. But then again, knowing what I know now, I was also a contactee and an extraterrestrial experiencer, and the two of them, which I came to learn later on in life, do very much go hand in hand. So over time, getting married, having children, going, I don't like the mix of the children with anything otherworldly, so I sort of shut down my abilities or shelved them, I guess. Not realizing that my children would be able to see, and I really did have to stay tuned in, as all kinds of things were going on. So I sort of got drawn into it, and here I am 20 years later.
Amazing.
Yeah.
20 years later. So you have a life, a life journey pretty much, right?
It's been a life journey for sure. I mean, I got involved in the paranormal probably early or mid 03. So I'm going into 20 decades of just being, or 20 years of just being in the field itself. Doesn't count anything that's happened to me before. School of hard knocks, as they say, in a paranormal way.
All right. So this is Halloween 2022. And for our listener out there, here's what we want to do. We're the Horsefly Chronicles home. You're Michelle. You're the investigator. We live in a haunted house, and we want to hear your most horrifying story and location.
Great question.
Ooh, wow. That's a really great question, but there's a good mix.
He's going to get a lot of good questions in for you.
Okay, I like it. I have, if we're going with a typical home investigation, I've had two that were probably really stuck in my mind, and I've done many investigations. One was a haunted location on Lake Huron, which was just amazing. It was not frightening to me, frightening to a lot of people, because you had a demonic sort of entity there that was there for, oh my gosh, it was there probably for at least 100 years, and probably instrumental for the death of the original family, or at least some of the family members. And it would call my house. I've got like multiple recordings of it, hundreds of hours of recordings, AVPs, but many, because it would call the house, and you pick up the phone and you hear something growling at you. And, I get called every name in the book. And the first time it ever spoke to me was when I was on the phone with the homeowner, and I had to hand it to her because she'd be in this big old house by herself a lot, because her husband worked away during the week. And anyway, she goes, I just have to go drop this in the post box just outside at the end of the driveway. I said, okay. She goes, I'm just gonna put the phone down. I'll be right back. I'm like, okay. So I could hear her going down the old servant stairs at the back. I could hear her go. I heard her go out. I heard her talking to the postmaster, all of that. And then something starts playing and fiddling with the phone. All I hear, the dogs just going crazy. There was like 3 dogs in the house just going crazy. I'm going, what's going on? And somebody picks up the phone and calls me basically an F and C word. And I was just like, I never had anything speak to me from the other side other than in an EVP. This is real time on the phone. It goes, you. I'm just like, oh, so she have a potty mouth. That's seriously the best thing I could come up with, was a potty mouth. And then it went like this, and it's just, the dogs are going crazy still, and it was on there for like a few seconds. I bet you 30 seconds. And she came back. She goes, what's all the commotion? The dogs are going nuts. I'm like, oh, I got something to tell you. Just,
Wow.
Yeah. I spent probably 3 years investigating that location. So it was definitely one of those standing moments that just stayed in my mind.
So let's think about this. You're telling us that a spirit or entity called you.
Oh, that would happen. Mm-hmm.
How does
Not
that
just
happen?
me, other people.
No. Actually, that's happened to me in the 90s at my parents' home. How does it happen?
I believe that spirits can ride radio waves, obviously, because we play with ghost boxes, and sometimes you catch EVPs, you can hear music in the background. I think they can travel, they can, hitch a ride on a phone line sort of thing. It was because this was always on my landline at first. So I'm thinking, okay, I could see how they could attach to that energy and work their way through. It's still something that a lot of researchers are like, that's really interesting. It's an interesting theory. And then it started happening a couple times with my cell phone. And I thought, how are they doing that? Because we were in the infancy of cell phones, seriously, 2007, back then, 2008. I mean, it's not like what it is now. You had the old flip phones and I remember being on the phone, and then when I got off the phone, and not even with the homeowner of this house, I was on the regular phone call with just a family member, and there were 2 voicemail messages. When I got off the phone, I'm like, it didn't even beep through because I always had the 2 lines on my phones, and there it was, that same tone in the voice and everything else. And I was just like, that is a curiosity. But I do believe that they can ride the waves. I do believe they can more than do that. There's a comment.
It's fascinating. They can. Back in the 90s, at my parents' home, I hadn't attached my whole life. And I remember calling the TV show Sightings, and I wanted to speak to Peter Jennings and tell him what was going on. This is like in the early 90s. And then the phone started going staticky, real staticky, and then it would disconnect the call. And I'm looking at the phone line, I'm checking everything out, plugging it into a different wall jack. And I call back about a half hour later, and it starts to crackle again, and it dies out.
Yep.
And then a couple of days later, I gave up on that. A couple of days later, I'm talking to a friend about my attachment, and again, it's crackling and it dies out. So you're correct. It listens, it knows. It's not like it's picking up. I mean, I would hope not. That's picking up a telephone on the other side saying hello, because I'm listening to you. I mean, can you just imagine? But it goes through the line. Somehow they're able to manipulate electronics, and it's fascinating and scary at the same time. But yet it's true. There's some things we just cannot explain. I mean, I've heard stories where someone was buried. This is back a few years ago, actually, and the person that was just recently buried is calling up the daughter. But they're gone.
See?
Yeah, and it's like, well, how is this possible? And it's possible because, and this is important for the listener out there. It's possible, and yet remember that the other side always listens. So we have to talk as if we're trying to respect a friend or something. And again, it could be a negative entity that, like, in your case, you don't know who you're messing with. I don't know who is messing with me. Well, I may know now, but they can do these things. And then you have to say to yourself, if they can do that, what else can they do to us? Michelle, what can they do to us?
They can do just about anything they want. I think it gets funky because there's a lot of researchers out there who don't believe that entities or spirits can harm us. But if they can pick something up or project something, if we can do that with psychokinesis and direct our energy to something, people can create footsteps, open and close doors, throw things from across the room. I would not want to be on the receiving end of something flying across the room at me. It's going to hurt. People have been pushed down the stairs. People have been scratched. So I don't really go with the theory that energy can't hurt you in one form or another. I believe that it can, to a degree. So if you're sitting there standing at the top of the stairs, I mean, this house here, a lot of people would say, I have a really uneasy feeling at the top of the stairs. And we've come to learn just through, multiple people have come through here to film, or mediums and things like that. They're like, somebody was pushed from the top of the stairs here. And we're just like, yeah, that would explain why everybody had this fear, this standing at the top of the stairs, a sense of uneasiness. So I most certainly do think that they can, cause a degree of harm. They also know what's in your head. So this is where sometimes, even with Ouija boards and things like that, it's manipulated because they know what's in your head. I always say to people who are trying to use some sort of a communication device, clear your mind, because you're going to get all the answers you want. Whatever is in your head, they're going to give it to you. And they'll give you more because they know more about you than you think. How many investigations have I been on where they already knew I was coming?
Oh, yeah.
Because I've had things basically show up at my house before. I had a really malevolent case I was going to. It was the first time I was going to meet with this individual. They had it really, really bad. The church wouldn't help them. Nobody would help them. Priests would come in. Things were flying off shelves. And he was just like, okay, I'll get back to you. Never did. So eventually, through the grapevine, it came to me. And I was just up in my ensuite getting ready, and I could hear this thing was a knocker. So it knocked on my bedside table 3 times. And I stopped. I knew right away. So I walked out and grabbed my purse and I said, I'll see you in an hour, mister. Grabbed my purse and went out the door because I just don't acknowledge. Acknowledgement is empowerment. So I just don't do it. I'm just like, you're totally inconsequential to me. My concern is the family. I don't care what you're doing. And we caught him on recording as I was going through a walkabout. I call it a walkabout, just going from room to room. And I got there, that woman like literally threw herself, dropped to her knees and wrapped herself around me. I was just like, oh my God, this is bad. Everything that this family had been through. It's horrific.
Amazing. The impressions of energy.
And it's true what you said that, you have to just try to ignore as best as you can. It's not always that easy to, though.
Acknowledgement is power because your words are power, your mind is power, your thoughts are power.
Right.
And they feed off of that. And they know that if they can create fear creates negativity. Negativity creates the darkness creates the apparitions and the control.
Yeah.
And to the listener out there, I can tell you firsthand, whether we choose to believe or we don't believe, or we're skeptical and questionable of can they actually harm me, look, I could first attest that I've seen things going way back from the 80s that are unexplainable to people. So yes, they can oppress, possess, scratch, burn, bite. It's rare. It's very rare, but it does happen.
It does.
And I've seen it happen.
You see Jake get smacked in the face right in front of us.
It happens under the most intense circumstances of thought. When you feed it the energy it needs and wants. I always say it's like that pinhole of light. The light is fear into its darkness, and it can do things that you really can't explain. I mean, have you ever done an investigation, Michelle, and then you look in a mirror and then you don't see you see something else?
Oh my gosh, I'll one up it. Here's a comment from Wayne. And he said, at this house on Lake Huron, he goes, photos were taken in this place with you and other members of the team where the original family members' faces were superimposed over yours. And then there was a demonic entity in the photo. I'll tell you something. We were sitting down at a table, and it was an event that we were doing that the homeowners should do tours. And it was like a bed and breakfast. And she goes, could you do a seance? I'm like, okay. Oh, absolutely. We can be in control of this thing. This goes to show you, it doesn't matter what season you are. So we sat there, and there were other people at the table bringing forward. The original family was still stuck in the house. And a little young guy came to me. He was probably about, 8 or 9, 10 years old. And they would do tours at the house all the time. They became very friendly with the owners, like the 2 families. And I could sense something come up behind me. So I grabbed him and pulled him into me because I couldn't send him away at this point. There was something behind both of us. So I pulled him into me and I held him. And in my mind, I'm just trying to back this off. So Mom thought, oh, this is great. That is a great picture. Snaps the photo, sends the photo a few days later when she was going through them. My face looked like the original woman of the house. And my colleague looked like totally different. And there was a young man, probably in the 21, 22, a researcher who was a guest researcher there, who looked like the original homeowner, the husband, who was, had a receding hairline. You could see it. And behind this boy that I was holding, you could see this demonic entity. You could see the horns. You could see it had a bit of a snout. You could see the white of the eyes. It was crazy. So yes, I absolutely have been in situations where I didn't have to look in the mirror. I mean, it was caught right there on photograph, like forever to see.
So let me ask you something. That's interesting that you said that. And, this is something that a lot of people question. Do you think, and I'm not going to mention names, that certain celebrities, singers, there's pictures that capture them not looking like them, that they look like something else as they're performing?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's something more sinister behind that?
I think that it's so hard because we're in a digital age. See, I remember back in the day, a lot of the EVPs I did were on, I still prefer to do EVPs when possible on a cassette, only one side, so the sound can't bleed to the other side. With, a lot of people like Polaroid cameras for the same reason. Film cameras, because the image, when you can look at a negative and you can see a spirit in that negative, you can't fudge that. The only way it gets fudged once it gets to the computer and it starts getting messed around with and downloaded. So we live in a digital age. It's really difficult to see what's what anymore. Some people are really good at falsifying things, but spirits and entities can step in easily. Like when that photo was taken, I didn't feel anything inside me, but I'm thinking what she did is she stepped in front of me. And this is what the family members did. They would, so many recordings came out of that house. So many people had phenomenal experiences. But I think sometimes these things either meld with your energy, they step in front of you, they step in you for a moment. Their energy can meld with our energy. That's
so. So let's say you have 10,000 people in an audience, you're a top performer, and this does happen. Is the entity then getting stronger because there's so many people within the audience that it's feeding off of that and getting an energy rush off of that? And I'm not going to say names, but there's like a concert like a year and a half ago when the actual performer was watching thousands of people rush to the front stage, and people were trampled and killed.
Oh yeah, I remember.
He was actually watching and not doing anything, and then kind of singing along with him as this is happening. Now, is it possible that they can? You said in the beginning of the show, which is true, that they come to visit you before you will go to a location, and we know that firsthand. So then, is it possible? It doesn't just have to be a haunted house. It could be where there's a lot of people where they can feed off the crowd's energy.
All it takes is one person to come in with an attachment, and that thing they can bring others with them. I have yet to go to a location where there's less than one, or one and less, like just one. No, most of the time, there are others as well. I think once that door is open, it's open. So all it takes really is one person to come in with that attachment and feed the frenzy. These things, negative energy, and when I say negative, it's things such as fear, depression, anxiety, addictions, things that keep people down will be amplified. Can they create those things as well? Yes, I believe they can. But when you have that, or you suffer from things like that, and you are sad or you're mad, they feed off of it. It's food for them. This is why people in these situations, okay, this is why it amps up. It plays the game of divide and conquer. So it gets everybody fighting with each other. It isolates you from people who could potentially help you. Emails don't go through, phone calls don't go through. You might think, oh, I haven't talked to this person for a while, I'm going to contact them. No. Then all of a sudden that thought's not there anymore, and you just seem to withdraw more and more and more. So if you're going into one of these places, one of these concerts that, people are having a good time, but there's so much energy being ramped up that this is stuff, it's just it could be like a feeding frenzy. But you think good energy would be better, it's more powerful. But all it takes is just, you have 10,000 people. What if you have 1,000? Only a small percentage that comes in with some kind of an attachment or under something's watchful eye. You imagine what's going on in that room? Wouldn't take much.
That's scary thoughts, and yet it's true.
It is.
And there's also the question: do some of the top performers, again, it's just a question, hypothetically speaking, do you think that it's possible they practice maybe some of the darker arts for the exchange of fame and wealth? Because we know those stories are all over.
Sure. So did they sell out, in other words?
Yes.
Yeah. I think you can look at it from two different angles. I mean, you go back into the 70s, for example, you look at Jimmy Page. I mean, he owned Aleister Crowley's home. He basically was a practitioner of that occult magic, like this was a thing that was going on. The Church of Satan was huge. You had all these celebrities who were members with Anton LaVey in the Church of Satan. It was a thing to do. I'm sure there's still Crowley practitioners out there even now. So you have that element of practitioners, and it's a lifestyle for many. A lot of it gets misunderstood. Like there's good witches and everybody thinks, burn them all at the stake. No, it doesn't work that way. Okay. Like this is not all bad. This was old Celtic and pagan traditions that got bastardized as, religion became a thing. But when you're looking at sellouts, for example, did people sell out for fame and fortune? Well, I can tell you, I mean, I've been in contact with spirits who have been held back. And when I said, you sold out, and I won't say who this celebrity was. I was asked to come to an event, and this event, they started, the people that were there were doing, spirit communication. And when I said, you sold out, it was like, yes, ma'am. I'm like, oh, because I kept saying, why are you here? Why are you not moved on? He goes, he won't let me. I went, he?
Oh,
and then I heard a growl come through, and I went, oh. Everybody heard it. It was just like, it was like a spirit box thing. And I was just like, oh,
wow.
That became a rescue. So I promise I will come back and help you. And I did. Like we did. My team did. Absolutely. So does it happen? Yeah, 100% it happens. A lot of celebrities have come forward and have whistleblown on that. So what do you think, when you, I mean, and we've worked with people, just everyday people who've sold out their souls for whatever reason to become successful in business or successful in love. And what do you think when your physical body dies out that the deal is done? No, they do come and collect. Believe me.
I don't think they realize that in the moment, and that's the problem.
It is a problem. It doesn't end. It doesn't end. We have seen spirits with attachments.
Yeah.
We found spirits with attachments still.
Yeah.
There was one guy who murdered his family. He had no recollection of it. When we removed the attachment, I said, you murdered your family. And it was a spirit individual, and he just cried because he had the attachment at the time of the murder, which went back to 1800s. How long has that soul been tormented? It happens, people. Careful what you do. Careful.
That's so true.
Mm-hmm.
We're here a short time in the physical realm, but you sell your soul, and there's no time on that side. So
your essence is your most precious. It's yours. It's the one thing you have. It's yours. Why would you give it away for nothing?
It's sad because we know this.
Yes.
And studying, but these people, they really don't get it.
Well, then it goes back to different beliefs. Like you have the Freemasons, you have the Illuminati, you have different, organizations that gain power from, you always see the goat's head in a lot of these things, the symbol of the goat's head.
Yeah, but that's Baphomet, and that was an old pagan god. Just got brought in. Like you have practitioners of the old pagan and Celtic ways. There's ancient knowledge out there with Druidism and all sorts of things. It's a whole other show because believe me, there's a lot of information. But the church has come forward when they would come in and take over countries or in different civilizations. They slowly amalgamated. Halloween was one of them. They amalgamated those ancient traditions and brought them and incorporated their own traditions into it. But when you look at some of the demons that the church has listed, they're old pagan gods.
Wow.
Does it make them, like what is it? The mindset change is what was instilled into us as to, we were taught to fear. But these were beings, many of them, not all of them, because believe me, there's a huge book, with a lot of names of demons and stuff. But, a lot of the bigger ones that we're familiar with were in fact considered, pagan deities or demigods or, things like that.
Interesting. Very
Celtic
interesting.
traditions, ancient.
What is your opinion on the Amityville case?
Amityville, that's a tough one. Amityville's a tough one. I have had the privilege of meeting Lorraine on a couple of occasions, and I believed her when she said, she looked at me one day and she said, that house almost killed us.
Yeah.
And,
I believe, yeah.
I've had Laura DiDio on the show. Amelia and I have interviewed her, and she spoke in great detail. She's one of the reporters who broke all this. It was just like she was there the night that there was a seance. She knew she had gotten and worked with Hans Holzer. Like, there was a group of them.
Too, the other
but
day.
How much of it becomes? Sorry.
I reached out to her the other day too.
To Laura?
To the reporter.
Yeah, Laura, I can hook you up. Yeah, if you have. Yeah, she's wonderful. She's wonderful. She's on the show a couple times. 2 different perspectives of the same thing. It's just brilliant, really brilliant. She's very knowledgeable. But how much of this was empowered by the mindset of the people who believed it and focused on it so much? It almost, to me, has it's like a tulpa effect, like Slender Man was a tulpa created on a website that so many people put thoughts and characteristics and energy into it that there started being sightings all over the world of this thing. How much, of Amityville was that? Because when it came out, there was nothing else like it. But, I've spoken a little bit with Christopher, spoken a little bit with Laura, and with Lorraine. There was something in that house, without a doubt. There was something in the house. But I think media sensationalizes everything and makes it an even bigger thing than maybe what it was. There was something definitely there, without a doubt.
My real question is, in your opinion, do you think that he really did what he did because of the voices in his head?
Well, he was said to be, an avid drug user. What I believe, just in working around malevolent hauntings and attachment, that when you are on a substance, whether it be alcohol or drugs, people do ayahuasca and mushrooms and DMT for the same effect, to open you up so you can communicate with those things that are around. Was he so opened up that something did come in and went, because you're vulnerable, your subconscious is so wide open that these things just wait to come in. I mean, people have done drugs and come back totally different. This is why people say, this person's schizophrenic. I think this person, really something came in and took over. And I remember speaking to someone about this, who had seen something at a hospital. He saw a shadow coming down a ceiling going towards this young guy. The guy was only about maybe 16, 17 years old. And he goes, I intervened. And I said, no, don't do it to him. Come to me. And the thing went right back up and came to him. And he said, within a year, I was in this position where it was like, okay, schizophrenia. Is it schizophrenia? Or there's a fine line between schizophrenia and a demonic oppression. Very fine line.
And it's hard to how do you pinpoint that? I always ask that question. I mean, that's such a hard thing to
I need permission when I would work these cases. And I hate to say cases because these are all people, so I apologize for that. But when I work with people in this situation, I will usually request some sort of psychiatric or psychological assessment. And because a lot of times they'll put them on medication, and doctors will say, I need permission from them to work with these people because I don't want to make things worse. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. But depending on the religious background, I need to be able to go through certain steps, especially with Catholics. There are certain things they require. And with permission, then I'll say, okay. And usually permission comes with just don't let them go off the medication. I'm like, fair enough. And that's usually how it goes. You have to be very careful in situations like that. So there's a really, really fine line. Yeah. You have to be very, very careful. This is somebody's lives that we are, this is a life. You're working with attachments or potential oppression. You have to remember this is not about getting all the evidence and getting, experiences and that manic EVP that people think they're going to make $1 million on their dime. It doesn't now. God, I've got hundreds of hours of this stuff. You want to get growled at? I'll give you growlies all freaking day.
I agree with you. Actually, when me and Phil helped, a few people, we don't use any of that stuff ever. I don't like it. To be honest, we just come in with ourselves and what we feel and what we say because, right?
But that's what you have to do. I can tell by talking to somebody pretty much what they're going through.
Yeah.
And then I can direct myself one way or another and go, okay, this is what I think this is. I don't go investigating in homes. It's been years since I've done that because I'm not going to give attention to something that wants all the attention. They want to draw you away from that family because they want that family help. They want you to walk away thinking that, they're crazy. They want to isolate the family from getting any help. My only objective when I'm working with people is that family. I have researchers that will come. I would do an interview with somebody. If they wanted to talk to me for 3 hours and say, here, because people their memories start getting jogged the more they talk. I let them talk. I've had to knocking around, doors slamming. My researchers, I don't have to open my mouth. They know what they need to do. Nothing is taking me away from that family. Mm-hmm. It's a privilege to help somebody. It's not a researcher who should say to a family, you're lucky I'm here to help you. I'm here. You're good. You're good. No, thank you for entrusting yourself and your family to me. Let me take the weight for a little while and you just relax. And that's the way it goes. That's the way it should go anyway.
True. When you're at a location and doors slam and like you're saying, all that kind of stuff and knocks, how do you feel?
It doesn't faze me.
Is any part of you fear the unknown? No,
I don't. Early years, I have to say things happen. Like when that thing picked up the phone, I was like, what? The best I could do is say, you're a potty mouth. I'm like, oh my God, I would handle that much differently now. I'd be, but I learned never to challenge things. I learned to not show my fear. Not that I don't get startled like everybody else. I mean, things go on, I startle, but in the back of my mind, I always know, don't give it to them. Don't give it to them. Like people will laugh because I think when we did one of the paranormal shows and we were in Romania and at this point we were already back to the room by now. And I'm just sitting there happy to have Wi-Fi. Meanwhile, whatever it was in the forest followed us back. Things were walking around. There was knocking around. The phone was ringing. Nobody was on it. And, my friend had her cell phone was just going. She goes, are you seeing this right now? And all you see me, because of the video, she set up a camera, is going, It's on my phone. I am not giving it to him. And I ended up really without any issues. It followed back to North America. And they were having issues for months. Yeah. But when I say acknowledgement is empowerment, you're empowering this thing by acknowledging its presence. You really do. Mindset is so important.
That's true. But there was a case when me and my friend were playing around with Ouija board in the 80s, not knowing what we're doing. This is like mid-80s. And we left this one location. It wasn't an investigation. We were just messing around at a friend's house. And then my friend was driving the car, and then we're going over the Verrazano Bridge, and I'm in the passenger seat, and he looks at me and starts smiling and laughing, and he's going over 100 miles an hour. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Slow down, man. You're going to get us killed. And he's going fast, an hour at 110, 120, over the Verrazano Bridge. And it came to the toll thing, and he went right through it. And I'm like, we're going to get killed. And so what I actually witnessed was someone getting taken over that I knew.
Right.
And
it was quick, wasn't it?
He could have killed us.
Yeah. That's how quick it can happen.
Yeah. And this is why.
And then I put the radio on, and I started playing songs that we knew we would both like. And I'm trying to have a conversation, like trying to mentally get his awareness to get him out of whatever's going on with him. And then he slowly, slows down the car, slows up 70 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, pulls off on the side street. It's like, what's happening to me?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll drive. I'm not sure what's going on, because I wasn't sure what was happening. I wasn't aware of all this now, but boy, you got to be careful, because I asked you, Michelle, you said, no, I don't get afraid. I don't fear, because acknowledgement is power. And that's correct. But then I have to say, because of my experience, we have to be careful who's next to us, investigating with us, or doing something of intent with us, because if they're the driver, or if they're in control of any kind of machinery, or they have any kind of things in their possession, this thing can take you out.
It's beyond that. Even people who are not, like I've had a situation. A lot of people have asked me about this situation. I had done an investigation, and something followed back and affected my daughter, who had nothing to do with anything. She lost her sight.
Jeez.
Like that. We did not even click with me. Went through every test under the sun, MRIs, CAT scans, different optometrists, eye specialists, psychologists to work with maybe some kind of a, like a stress situation. I mean, everything. And my family doctor, who knew what I did, looked at me and he goes, do you think that we can't find anything wrong? There's no reason for any of this to be happening. He goes, have you been working on something lately that could be a problem? And I went, oh. It humbles you, and so I had to, tap into this thing. And just went, that's it. Like, we weren't returning to the location. So I'm just like, and all I kept saying is like, stay away. I'm like, well, that's no problem, because we weren't going back anyway. But I'm like, all right, and people go, oh, it's a deal with the devil. I'm like, oh, get away from me right now, because you have no freaking clue. What you see on television is part of the story, very small part of the story as to what really happens. But, almost instantly, her vision came back. It was never the same, but it came back almost instantly. So they have a way of infiltrating this thing, basically saying, I infiltrated. I went back years later, and the team went and we popped him out. Just, you're gone now. It took a while, but we went back and we did a complete removal of him from the location.
Well, that's scary. That happened to Zach Flagans in Demon House, that documentary he was filming years ago.
Well, that's what we believe to be happening.
Well, that's what he said on the documentary, that he can't see. He had a problem with one of his eyes. Well, look, I mean, TV, for entertainment purposes, television, movies, things.
No creative control by those in front of the camera.
Right. But the underlining and the hard surface of these stories is true.
Yes.
And I want to go back to Amityville Horror. I was there in the 80s. Okay, so you get a picture. Like, I had a big group of friends from Staten Island, and we were scavenger hunts, daredevils, and all that stuff back in the 80s. There were no cell phones and electronics. We went to the Amityville Horror House. It was not white. I think it was like a greenish color, and we're in front. And it was like 10 of us. We're all taking pictures, joking around. A couple days later, we find out from one of the people taking the pictures that we're not in the pictures. And that's the truth. We were not in the pictures. The house was. The hedges were. We were not in the pictures. And we blew it off like, oh, maybe it's just something with the camera back.
Sure, logic. Right.
But that house, definitely had something to it,
yeah, it's just so weird. So there's so many families that have not gotten infected, but that could happen. It depends. That's why I think I said this on your
Mindset.
show. It depends on the family too. I mean,
Yeah, it
that's
does.
what
It
I
does.
believe.
I've seen it happen where people have moved into locations that I've worked with people who have moved out, and people move right in, and if you don't acknowledge it, there'll be an explanation for literally everything. But if I don't, the theory is obviously they feed off negative energy. They can't survive in a positive environment. If you have a family that's really solid and really positive, and that don't have maybe the same hardships as the family that was there before, they're not going to be affected the same way. I've seen it happen dozens of
Go
times.
back to our story because we had the perfect life. We weren't even thinking about anything paranormal. I mean, boom.
It finds its way
so
in.
That's how did it find us and why?
It finds its way in somehow through the skeletons of your past. And
it does, or maybe you just walked into a property that had a lot of things nearby. Maybe there's just something about you yourself, like you say, that they're like, oh, wait a minute, we can come in, and if they get a reaction or they can find a weak link in your space, and it's that simple, then they're in. And a lot of times that happens with children. Or that happens with maybe somebody who may have an addiction or anger issues, or, like, oh, we can push this person's buttons, and they start pushing those buttons. You're like, oh, we're getting a reaction. Okay, we can keep doing this. Sometimes people move in. I worked with a family who had a house on a golf course, brand new golf course. It was stellar. There was just no reason. You look at the community, it's just like picture perfect, Stepford Wives type of thing. But it was on a farm property that had a lot of hardship before that. And this big golf course community gets built over top of it. What's with the land doesn't just go away because you want to pretty it up and make it look different. Like putting lipstick on a pig, it's still going to be a pig. Oh, I love pigs, just saying. But I'm just saying, you can dress it up. It doesn't take it away. That has to be removed.
Yeah.
Julie and I recently watched the episodes of 28 Days Haunted. That was just put out there on Netflix. We found it interesting, and we're at the edge of our seat. And I guess the question I have for you is, now on some of the occasions I've seen they were being affected and then afraid and leaving the rooms. Would you leave the room if you knew that this is one-on-one now with this thing, or would you fight back at that point in time?
I would fight back because that's what I've done. I've always done that. I've never walked.
So you wouldn't leave the room?
I don't walk away. No, I'm the one like taking care of my team. I've saw the episodes and I thought they were really well done. But I thought you have to put yourself in their situations, and you have to look at what the producers want. You have to do this or this or this. We want to see. Because it was based on how the Warrens would investigate something, and they were pretty thorough. So they wanted to see certain steps. But to see somebody just, to walk away and leave your colleague alone, you all know your limits. If you're going to get taken over, for instance, you're no good to your colleague anyway. Step away, get a breath of air, and then go back. For me, I've always taken the responsibility of my researchers. So I'm not the one that's going to walk away. I'm just not.
So you would stay there and fight back?
Yeah. I would not leave a colleague behind. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Well, now let's take the case with Dave
Yeah.
Schrader. He was on an episode we've seen like a year ago, The Holes of Files, and then he gets kicked in the leg, and then he kneels down. Now, at that point in time, what would you do? Because, if something is kicking you that's not there.
You have to cut your losses. I left the haunted forest because I had spirits saying, go now, go. I see things coming down. I see a tree line coming down. I'm like, okay. And I see spirits working really hard with energy saying, go. And I'm just like, okay, I'm out of my element. I'm not in a closed space. I'm in a very big place forest, and that's known to cause harm. But my mindset, I'm like, I'm just gonna, you're not handing me my own ass sort of thing, but I'm gonna walk out of here gracefully. I'm taking my team with me because there was something on our heels the whole way out. You just have to know when to say when. If somebody's going to jump into you, you're not going to be the superhero and, oh, I'm going to fight you till the end. No, you gather your colleagues and you go. But if you have a colleague who's like, I'm not going, well, we all know how that ended. It's like, you have to know when to say when. You can't be careless. You have to be smart. And if smart is no, get out of the way, then you get out of the way. That's that simple. You just can't be the hero. You can't always be the hero in certain situations. You really do need to use proper judgment. And at this point, if the person who walked away says, I know me, and I know I'm going to end up in trouble here, and I can't sit in this situation, then you don't sit in that situation. Safety first. That's the way it goes. You just ask what I would do. I would stand my ground. But even I have my limits. I will walk if I've got to walk, but I wouldn't leave somebody there. That's just me. If I have someone being unreasonable because maybe they're in an aggressive state of mind because they're being affected by something, you just have to keep an eye from a distance, but you keep an eye.
Yeah.
That's true. Hey, really quick, what do you think about, and again, really quick, I know we're running out of time, but let's go to Emily Rose, the movie, the documentary. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, it did creep me out, that's for sure.
It did. It really was a difficult to watch as somebody who works in that sort of because those are the sort of things I work around. I've seen people get stepped into. I've seen crazy things, and I'm like, oh my God, nothing to that degree. But to see somebody get taken over, even for a moment, like I just watched somebody completely dislocate their wrist to pull out a bracelet and just never broke their stare. And I was like, what was that? So it's frightening. This young lady endured so much, and there's a lot based on that. Did the church do the right thing? Did the priest do the right thing? People, academics and courts, and that's not what their belief is. If you can get somebody on the jury to say, I'm a believer in that, that's great. But if you don't, it's really, really hard to prove that. Was there negligence? There's no doubt about it. This girl just physically changed. It was horrific for her and her family.
Yeah.
She was a pretty girl when you see the pictures, and then what happened to her? He's like,
I think it was a little bit about everything.
They destroy the body.
Yeah.
Death. Ultimately, in a demonic oppression, I think the perfect scenario to end for anything that's taking over. Like, if we're going to go with the Catholic or the Christian way of things, demonic possession, then the ultimate deal is death. Ideally, you killing someone and yourself is the bonus round for them, I'm sure, because it's 2 for 1 soul day, and I don't mean to be insensitive about it, but it's the only way I know how to explain it. So that's why so many people, like suicides, for example. This is they get so they've just had enough, and you could see where it would lead, to taking your own life, and it doesn't end after that. That's the problem.
Wait, it doesn't what?
It doesn't end.
So if a person takes their life, it doesn't end at that point for that person?
Not if they've got an attachment, not if something's like attaching to them or oppressing them.
Okay. So
these things are beings in another realm here. Like these are energy. This is energy. This isn't, they're not, can they manifest? Yes. Can they project what they want you to see? Yes. When they kill the physical, it's the essence they're after. They possess the physical to wear it down, to break you, to just, if you're physically sick, you have no energy, you can't fight back. We rely on the physical. We just drive around in these meat suits, but this is pretty much what it is. The goal is the essence. It's the energy. That's what feeds them.
Amazing. Wow. I mean, this has been, you're fascinating. You're an abundance of knowledge, and I could be here all day, but we are out of time.
We are.
And, let's tell everybody, even though everybody knows you, where they can find you, all that good stuff.
Well, I'm pretty easy to find, michelledesrochers.com, or you can find me on The Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano, Wednesday, Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. Always a lot of fun. go check out Phil and Julia's segment that they did with us not that long ago, right? Beginning of October. Find it. It was excellent. And check out a few others.
Really quick, Michelle, the Haunted TV show, because I watch a lot. I love those episodes you're on. So where do they find those?
I think Netflix has Paranormal Survivor. Haunted Case Files might be another one. I think they call them Paranormal Investigators in England or something. So you have to watch the names, but some of it is on Netflix and Amazon Prime and, and anywhere. I mean, they rerun on Discovery Channel pretty regularly.
When we watch one, we see our little friend Michelle sitting here.
Yeah, you did a great job. It's great. You have a lot of knowledge and you're helping out the field with your experience. So before we wrap it up in Halloween 2022 edition, give us words of wisdom to the listener.
Well, I always say, again, acknowledgement is empowerment. But when you're researching, say what you mean what you say, follow through, because words are everything. And if you turn around and you put something out there, there are things that are listening.
Yeah.
True. Thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on Horsefly Chronicles Radio. It's been a pleasure. Julie, wrap it up.
Well, thank you. Special thank you to Carnation for sponsoring the show. And join us next week, 105.3 FM from New Orleans. And stay tuned for Trish Mel with The Missing Piece.
Everyone have a safe, great night. Trick or treat, and we'll catch you next week.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle.
Have a great night.
Thanks, guys. Good night.